Watching TV has changed over time. Streaming has become the new norm. That's why Golden State Media Concepts television podcast dives headfirst to the world of cord cutting. Want to be on the loop of what's hot in Netflix? Or if it's not a preference, what about original shows in Hulu? We've got you covered. Join us as we fill in the blank and talk about movies to stream and what show you should be binging. This is the Golden State Media Concepts television podcast.
Yeah, go the seltzer water. Get that. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the GSMC Television Podcast. We're part of the mighty GSMC Podcast Network, and I'm your bleach-free host, Howard Fletcher. I am very glad that you tuned in today. If you've been here before, welcome back. You are truly the reason I'm here. If you are a first-timer, stick around. Give me a chance to turn you into a long-timer. We like to have a lot of fun around here, so let's get started. I'm excited about our big show today. I'm going to tell you about more films that, like I said, are going to make the jump directly to streaming. So you can bet that I'm going to probably be talking some smack about John Fithian again. Not because he's a bad guy. It's just so fun to do. There are also some cool projects in development over at HBO. We'll get into that. I'll, of course, bring you breaking news as it comes. And I'll give you my predictions for the season finale. Thank goodness it's not the series finale for HBO's Westworld, one of my favorite shows. But first, here is some breaking news. Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker will begin streaming on Disney Plus 2 months earlier than previously scheduled. The last installment of the original Star Wars series will debut on the streaming service, when else? On May 4th, which has become known as Star Wars Day among fans of the gargantuan movie franchise. I love saying the word gargantuan. That's why I put that in there. With the addition of Disney Plus, for the first time ever, fans will be able to stream all 9 films in George Lucas's Skywalker saga all in one place. So, the big question is, do you do it in chronological order, episodes 1 through 9, or do you do it in order of the theatrical release, which is 4 to 6, and then 1 to 3, and then 7 to 9? I would choose the latter just because I think that that's the way they're meant to be seen. But I know people who have really liked watching stuff in chronological order. I never liked it for anything. I like to see how they were originally released. I don't like the Godfather saga when they try to splice it all together so that it starts with Vito and ends with the death of Michael. But, and spoiler for Godfather 3, if you see it, that's the end. But I don't really care because I'm not a big Star Wars fan anyway. But for those people that are, you can see it all on Disney Plus. Other Disney Plus that's teed up for May the 4th is now, check this out. There's an 8-episode docuseries called Disney Gallery, The Mandalorian. Now, I guess Disney Gallery, they're going to do a series of docs on the making of whatever. This season, I guess, happens to be about the making of The Mandalorian. Now, how they stretch that out into an 8-episode docuseries is beyond me, unless every episode is the making of a single episode of The Mandalorian, which somebody really has to be like a Mandalorian head to get into that. But I'm sure it'll be interesting. I guess. Anyway, that's going to be on Disney Plus. Comes out on Star Wars Day 2, so you can go ahead and watch that as well. And also the series finale of the animated Star Wars The Clone Wars, which is, I saw a couple of seasons of it when it was on Netflix. I thought it was very good. I think there have been 8 seasons of it. There have been a lot of seasons of it. It's been very well received by most of the Star Wars crowd. So I guess if you're a big Star Wars fan, May the 4th is going to be a big day for you. With theaters shuttered nationwide during the COVID-19 pandemic, Disney continues to lean heavily on Disney Plus as an outlet for its premium entertainment product. And I think that this is something that will continue even after stay-at-home orders relax and theaters start to open again. I've said that before on this show, and I'll continue to say it. Unless I'm proven wrong, I don't think people are going to go rushing in the numbers they did pre-pandemic to movie theaters. And so Disney Plus, along with all the other studios that produce theater features, are going to have to get used to streaming being a way they're going to connect to the public, and they have to find out a way to make it profitable. The bad news for us who are consumers is that it's going to be more expensive for us to stream things now. You know, you have to, the paradigm before going into this, you know, it's funny how things change seemingly overnight. Well, really, literally almost overnight. When they made these movies, when they make a movie like a Star Wars movie, they expect to clear at least $500 million, at the least, $500 million. And you just can't do that with what it costs to stream a film now. And so, I mean, usually the streaming money, that's the gravy. That's not the bulk of the money. So, these studios are going to have to work out what happens at the box office. Either they're going to have to drop the prices of tickets. They have to make it incentivize people going to the theaters again, which if they're smart, they'll do. Or these features are going to be streamed immediately, or the window to getting them to streaming from the theater is going to be much shorter. And the cost of streaming is going to go up. It's going to be more expensive for those of us who like to consume their entertainment at home. Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker stars Daisy Ridley, Adam Driver, John Boyega, Oscar Isaac, Carrie Fisher, the late Carrie Fisher, Mark Hamill, Anthony Daniels, Naomi Ackie, Domhnall Gleeson, Richard E. Grant, Kerry Russell, Kelly Marie Tran, and Ian McDermott, and Mr. Colt 45 himself, Billy D. Williams.
I don't claim you can have a better time with Colt 45 than without it. But why take chances?
The J.J. Abrams directed movie, after hitting theaters December 20th, 2020, quickly topped $1 billion worldwide at the box office. Pretty much making my point that unless they can bring in revenues of $1 billion up, these large movies, these large blockbuster productions are going to be few and far between, because they're not going to be able to make the type of money back in today's world that they're used to, and makes it worth the while to make from their eyes. So there you have it. That's my rant about Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker, May 4th. Go check it out. And before I break for the next segment, I want to give you a TV quote for the week. It comes from a character that I enjoy following every week, or I've come to enjoy following every week. And that character is Villanelle, as played by Jodie Comer on the show Killing Eve. And in this past week's episode, Villanelle, she went to a custom fragrance shop to make a purchase. She wanted to get a special cologne put together. And she had to describe what type of fragrance she was looking for. What does she want? What is it that she's trying to exude? What was the purpose of this getting a custom fragrance? And she said she wanted to smell like power. Now, how does power smell? She was asked by the perfumist. I guess now would be a good time to let those of you who do not watch the show know that Villanelle is a professional assassin who is highly skilled and very good at her job. And she's a little crazy. And she is Russian. And I don't do a Russian accent very well, but the cadence has to be right for this quote to be good. So she said, like Roman centurion, who coming across an old foe, who in battle once hurt him greatly, but since then has become emperor, and is now powerful beyond measure. End quote. Now, I love Villanelle. And if you don't watch the show, then that quote probably sounds pretty stupid. Or you're probably saying, Howard, why'd you even bring that up? Well, Villanelle, she's a very sick puppy. But, no one makes sick puppies look as attractive as Villanelle. And if you don't watch the show, I would highly recommend you do it. That's one of the reasons why I'm bringing this up. The other reason is I just watched the show, and I thought that line was pretty funny with her delivery and that character, not just now. It's not in the pantheon of great television yet, Killing Eve. So I'm not saying this is one of the best things I've ever seen on TV, but I will say it's a very entertaining hour of TV on commercial TV. So it's not even really an hour if you take the commercials out, but it's well acted and well produced. And so I'm recommending you check it out if you're looking for something to put on your DVR. Next, I'm going to talk about some films, or at least one film for now, that is jumping to streaming that was slated to go into the theaters that are closed right now. Go get some refreshments. I'll be right back. Thanks for tuning in.
You really can't underestimate the importance of having the right creative work for your brand or your product. Whether it's a logo, a website, a book cover, or an ad campaign, you really need a quality design to make that big difference pop and deliver your overall engagement and success in a competitive market. That's where Design Crowd comes in. Design Crowd has over 750,000 designers from Sydney to San Francisco ready to help you with awesome creative ideas. They make crowdsourcing work for you. So if you need a logo or you're working on your creative branding, you can go to designcrowd.com and post a brief describing the design you need. And then within about 2 to 7 days, you'll receive up to over 100 different designs from designers around the world. Then you pick the best design and approve payment to the designer. So you're only paying for the design that you want. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of freelancing and out of crowdsourcing. And you don't have to be a huge company like Harvard Business School to use Design Crowd, although they have used it as well. You can start a project on Design Crowd for as little as $99. And if you go right now to designcrowd.com/health and wellness or enter the promo code health and wellness on their website, then our health and wellness listeners will receive up to $150 off of your design project. That's designcrowd.com/health and wellness or entering that promo code health and wellness.
Want to know the latest and hottest music hitting the airwaves? Don't be left out. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Music Podcast. It keeps you on the loop with everything you need to know from pop, rock, hip-hop, and the top 40. And we'll throw in news of your favorite artists, concert and tour dates, and so much more. Listen no further, because this is the gold standard in music podcast.
All right. Here you go. Come see here. You got it together? I'm here with my engineer, Jack the Pug. I forgot to introduce him at the beginning of the show, and he kind of got upset about that. So, Jack the Pug, that's my engineer. The King of Staten Island, which is put out by Universal Pictures. It's a semi-autobiographical comedy starring Pete Davidson, and it's going straight to video on demand, making it the latest film to forego a traditional theatrical release as cinemas remain closed during the coronavirus outbreak. Now, films go straight to video on demand all the time, but this one was slated to go into the theaters. Not the biggest fan of Pete Davidson. Makes me smile sometimes on Saturday Night Live, but he does have a big fan base. And, you know, I think it probably would have done decent. It would have, he would have had a pretty good run in the theater, I guess. My man, John Fithian, and for those of you who don't listen to the show, he is the president of the National Association of Theater Owners. And I'm sure he's not happy about this either. Oh, hell! And we will get into that later on. He's not happy when movies that are supposed to play in theaters go straight to streaming instead of going to the theater first. And for good reason, he represents all the theater owners. The King of Staten Island will premiere on home entertainment on June 12th, a week before it was scheduled to debut on the big screen. It's the second Universal movie following the studio's animated adventure, Trolls World Tour, to experiment with premium video on demand while audiences are stuck at home during the pandemic. John Fithian was pissed at Trolls World Tour, and he went on several media outlets and let everyone know how messed up Universal was for not waiting out theaters and putting Trolls World Tour straight on video on demand. And Trolls World Tour went on to have the biggest opening ever on demand. So it was a great plan by Universal, and I won't go over why. The other reasons, Trolls probably should have gone straight to video, but it worked out well for them, and they're going to try to do that with Pete Davidson. In recent weeks, other studios, including Warner Brothers, Disney, Paramount, and STX, have followed suit to various degrees. Warner Brothers is releasing Scoob, as talked about last show, a cartoon based on Scooby-Doo characters, ruh-roh, directly on digital rental services next month, while Disney announced Artemis Fowl would launch exclusively on Disney Plus in June, as reported last segment. Now, Artemis Fowl, it was supposed to be a movie, go straight to theaters, just like King of Staten Island, but Disney has a streaming service, so there's let's just throw it on there since we can't even get it in theaters right now anyway. This is the way it's going to be, folks. I'm telling you, please get used to it, because for movies like The King of Staten Island, which, even though I tried to be very complimentary of Pete Davidson, it was, in my humble opinion, The King of Staten Island had a 50-50 probability of being all right and being a total bomb. Saturday Night Live alum do not have a good track record making the jump from television to the movies. Especially if you're a B-lister like, God, I can't even remember his name, Pete Davidson. I mean, and that's look, Pete Davidson is on the cast. As I said, I was critical of another member of Saturday Night Live cast. I don't even remember who it was, but and I'll say the same thing now that I said then. Just to be on Saturday Night Live makes you an extraordinary talent. Okay. So I'm not trying at all to disparage Mr. Davidson, not in the least. I'm just saying that he could probably go a couple places and not be recognized, where, some other cast members who have had decent careers like Tina Fey couldn't. That's all I'm saying. So that's why it was a gamble for them to go on the movie. So while people are at home and they're held hostage, as I like to say, and they can have nothing better to do, put it on. That's a good move for Universal. He'll probably get more looks in streaming than he would at the theater. That's all I'm saying. And I think that's a really good move. Plus, people can smoke weed and watch the movie, and that's the type of movie it's probably going to be anyway. The King of Staten Island was scheduled to have its world premiere at South by Southwest, the film festival that's held every year in Austin, Texas. However, the event was canceled, as we reported on this show, due to the coronavirus pandemic. Now, if they had shown it at South by Southwest and been able to get that feedback, they would probably be more confident about putting it in theaters. But like I said, I think probably for all parties involved, except for, I'm sure Pete Davidson would like to have his movie in the theater. I mean, who wouldn't? However, I think people will enjoy it much more if they're at home with a pizza and a bong and some alcohol, because that's how they're going to consume it. And he probably will get better reviews. A slew of movies that were set to debut between May and August, including Disney's Mulan, Warner Brothers' Wonder Woman 1984, and Universal's Fast 9, have been postponed due to the unprecedented closure of movie theaters. Universal has also postponed Nobody, a thriller with Bob Odenkirk, as well as its remake of Candyman, which looks pretty good, Sing 2, and Minions Rise of Gru. So I thought that was interesting. I wish Pete Davidson the best. Movies are going to be streamed, folks. They're just going to be streamed more often. Here is some more breaking news that I am very excited about. HBO is currently developing a series based on the Hellraiser film franchise, which in turn was based on Clive Barker's novella, The Hellbound Heart. The prospective series will not be a reboot of Hellraiser, but rather, quote, an elevated continuation and expansion, end quote, of its mythology according to sources with knowledge of the project. This is an article out of Variety, a combination of Variety and The Hollywood Reporter. Mark Verheiden and Michael Daugherty are writing the project, while David Gordon Green, whose credits include Halloween and whose long-standing relationship with HBO extends to Eastbound and Down, Vice Principals, and The Righteous Gemstones, is attached to direct several episodes. This new project is unrelated to the big screen Hellraiser revival from Dark Knight writer David S. Goyer, which was announced at Spyglass Media Group almost a year ago. Now, I didn't know about that, which I think they're regretting now, though, because of the pandemic. I think that putting Hellraiser, for those of us who are Hellraiser fans like myself, I'll speak for myself, I am much more intrigued at the prospect of this being a series rather than a remake, or another sequel. There are way too many Hellraiser sequels. I mean, the film franchise spans 10 films and over 35 years. Oh, hell no! The antagonist of the Cenobites, who are the demons in the Hellraiser universe, is Pinhead. And you've probably seen him, the guy with the white head with all the pins sticking out, if you've never seen the movie. And he's iconic now. If you go to Comic-Con, any Comic-Con, someone's going to be walking around like Pinhead. In addition to the films, the Hellraiser brand has spawned a novel anthology, comic books, graphic novels, and obviously Halloween costumes. The first film was released in 1987, and let me speak as one who was a young adult during that time. The horror genre had devolved into just slasher films at that point. I mean, you had Freddy Krueger and all that, but that was it. And those of us who like horror, I wasn't very optimistic about the future of the genre. And Clive Barker came up with this concept that was actually chilling. It was quite good, and it injected life back into the genre. And so for that reason, I'm excited to see what they're going to do on HBO with it. I wonder who's going to play Pinhead in this updated version. My first choice would be Jim Carrey, but uncredited Jim Carrey. It would just be known that Jim Carrey played the part. But since he's probably too expensive and he may not even want to do it, I would try Tilda Swinton. I just think she would bring something odd and mysterious to the role, and that's what's necessary for Pinhead. Anyway, what do you think? Please email me at podcasthoward@gmail.com and let me know what actor you would cast in the role of Pinhead on Hellraiser. Next, I'm going to talk about a couple cancellations over Netflix and whatever other breaking news I can dig up. Thanks a lot. Talk to you soon.
You really can't underestimate the importance of having the right creative work for your brand or your product. Whether it's a logo, a website, a book cover, or an ad campaign, you really need a quality design to make that big difference pop and deliver your overall engagement and success in a competitive market. That's where Design Crowd comes in. Design Crowd has over 750,000 designers from Sydney to San Francisco, ready to help you with awesome creative ideas. They make crowdsourcing work for you. So if you need a logo or you're working on your creative branding, you can go to designcrowd.com and post a brief describing the design you need. And then within about 2 to 7 days, you'll receive up to over 100 different designs from designers around the world. Then you pick the best design and approve payment to the designer. So you're only paying for the design that you want. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of freelancing and out of crowdsourcing. And you don't have to be a huge company like Harvard Business School to use Design Crowd, although they have used it as well. You can start a project on Design Crowd for as little as $99. And if you go right now to designcrowd.com/health and wellness or enter the promo code health and wellness on their website, then our health and wellness listeners will receive up to $150 off of your design project. That's designcrowd.com/health and wellness or entering that promo code health and wellness.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
All right. Back. Hold that up. Okay. Way to go, Jack. All right. I got some breaking news. Netflix has canceled Turn Up Charlie. That was after its first season. The comedy, which starred Idris Elba, centered on a struggling DJ, a bachelor, who becomes a nanny for the daughter of a childhood best friend who has since become much more successful than he. Now here's a quote. Turn Up Charlie will not return for a second season, said a spokesman for Netflix. We're especially grateful to star and executive producer Idris Elba, who turned his passion for DJing into a witty, heartwarming comedy series. We're also thankful to executive producers Gary Wright and Tristan Shapiro and co-producers Martin Joyce and Anna Garanito, along with the dedicated cast and crew for bringing the story to life on Netflix. We look forward to continuing our relationship with Idris on future projects. End quote.
Do anything for him.
Now, I didn't watch Turn Up Charlie. I can't even say the name of it. I didn't watch it because I heard it was pretty bad. I mean, now I will usually look for myself, especially if a series or a movie has a person attached to it that I like, which is the case for Idris Elba. I mean, I've been a fan of his since The Wire, and then I saw him in Luther, which is the BBC detective drama series, which he was very good in, and then he's been in several projects since then. He's become an international star under consideration to be the next James Bond. I keep hearing varying stories as to whether he is or he isn't, but if you're under consideration, then you know you're a big star, period.
Yes, sir.
However, the people who told me that this series was not so good were close friends of mine who are, well, first things, they're all women, okay? These women love Idris Elba.
I'd submit to him.
And, you know, he's a big sex symbol. I think there are a lot of women who love him. But these particular women who are friends of mine, they would probably watch a show that was a 30-minute program without sound of just Idris Elba walking down the street.
Control.
And they would probably say, I'll tune in next week for the next great show of Idris Elba. But,
please,
you know,
sir.
They said it wasn't that good. So since you can't watch everything, and you'll hear me say that all the time, I figured this was one that I could put off to the side. And obviously I made the right choice because I wasn't the only one who didn't tune in to see Turn Up Charlie. And that's too bad. I think this is one of those examples, and there are quite a few, where a celebrity who's hot, and as I just mentioned, Idris Elba is hot, can get a project greenlit by a production company. Even if it's average, even if it's not so good, you know, and, you know, good for Idris. You know, they said his passion for DJing, and I guess this character he was playing is a DJ, and he pitched this show, and it got greenlit because they said Idris is connected to it. It's on Netflix. But, I mean, you know, we can put it on Netflix and people will watch it.
Oh, sir.
And it didn't turn out because it probably wasn't good. So, good, you know, I hope, good for him for going for it. Hopefully, if he tries again, and I hope he does, it will be a better effort. Usually is. You know, you usually have to go through a few failures before you can win. And especially since he was executive producer on this one. You know, hopefully he can get something done better in the future. You know, I know he tried the Dark Tower thing. I tried to watch the Dark Tower twice. I didn't read the books, so I wanted to watch it and not hold the books against it, because very rarely do movies, especially Stephen King dramas, live up to the book. But I tried to watch it as a movie and it was still unwatchable to me. I'm glad I didn't have to sit in the theater and watch that thing. So that's it for the Idris Elba story. I have some other breaking news. There are going to be some changes at the Oscars. The Academy of Motion Pictures Arts and Sciences has tweaked its Oscar eligibility rules in the wake of the coronavirus pandemic. Now, during a meeting on Tuesday, which was yesterday, I'm recording this on a Wednesday, the Board of Governors approved a temporary hold on the requirement that a film needs a 7-day theatrical run in a commercial theater in Los Angeles County. Those are a lot of criteria. Los Angeles County to qualify for the Oscars. Instead, films will be allowed to be released digitally without playing in theaters. However, that doesn't mean any movie premiering on streaming services will be eligible for Oscar Gold. To be considered, a streaming film must have already been planned to have a theatrical release, and the film also must be made available to the Academy Screening Room member-only streaming site within 60 days of the film's streaming or video-on-demand release. Why am I bringing this up on the television podcast? Well, I'm bringing it up because now they're doing this, they say, supposedly just because of the COVID situation, and I'm sure that's what spurred it on. But I believe that the Oscars are going to start opening this thing up to movies that are going to be delivered exclusively through streaming, because I think that's where the bulk of these movies are going to be shown for most of their run. They may still have that theatrical run stipulation that you have to be in there for at least a week or two, and I would imagine for most movies, they're going to have a short theatrical run. But I think a lot of movies are going to be pretty much streamed for most of their life, most of their running life. I'd mentioned the movie Bad Education, and I asked the question. I didn't know whether if it would be eligible for an Oscar. Apparently it will not be, because it always was intended to be shown on HBO. But I think in the future, those movies would be eligible, I think. Now here's a quote. The Academy firmly believes there is no greater way to experience the magic of movies than to see them in a theater. Academy President David Rubin and CEO Dawn Hudson said in a statement they released. Our commitment to that is unchanged and unwavering. Here comes the but. Nonetheless, the historically tragic COVID-19 pandemic necessitates this temporary exception to our awards eligibility rules. Now, I don't think it's going to be temporary, but that's what they say. The Academy supports our members and colleagues during this time of uncertainty. We recognize the importance of their work being seen and also celebrated, especially now when audiences appreciate movies more than ever, end quote. Now, once movie theaters are allowed to reopen, the 7-day window, they say, once again will be required for eligibility. Now, movies that have already streamed will not have to be then released in theaters. When theaters reopen, the Academy also will expand the number of qualifying theaters from beyond just Los Angeles County, as I mentioned before, to New York City, the Bay Area, Chicago, Miami, and Atlanta, Georgia. Why they've left out the Washington, D.C. area, I don't know. I'm offended. That's where I am. So the article goes on to say that the Hollywood Foreign Press, and they put on the Golden Globes. That's the organization behind the Golden Globes. They're going to make a similar adjustment or provision so that movies that were streamed this year can be under consideration and not have to have a theatrical release. I'm bringing this up because I think this is just a taste of things to come. I'm pretty sure that most films, and well, we'll see. Let me amend what I've said in the past. Theaters starting this weekend, actually last weekend in Georgia, but starting this weekend and on in the future, Texas and other places in the country, they're going to start to open up. And we'll see how many people actually go to the movie theaters to see these movies, especially the new ones that come out. If they go like they were going before, if there are openings that are record-breaking or at least multi-million-dollar openings for some of these movies that they expect to have those types of openings, then I would say, yeah, they may go back to the way the rules were. I suspect that's not going to be the case. And they're going to have medium-sized openings in theaters, in which case they're going to go to streaming faster. And if they go to streaming faster, and then ultimately, I think there are just going to be some films that get released straight to video on demand. In the past, it's been done, but in the past, those films have been bombs. I think there are going to be some films that are premeditatedly, strategically released exclusively as streaming films that are going to be of high quality, and they are going to start being considered for an Oscar. Maybe they create a different category for them. I don't know, but I think that's going to be the case. Well, this is a good segue for the next segment, because the next segment, there was some more breaking news last night about Trolls World Tour, Universal Pictures, and AMC Theaters, and our friend John Fithian. I'll be right back with that. Go get some refreshments. Talk to you soon. You ready, Jack? Cool. See you soon.
Yes, sir. I'd do anything for him. I'd submit to him. Control me. Please, sir. Oh, sir.
Want to find out what movies to go see? Then check out the GSMC Movie Podcast. It's your ticket to the latest movies, whether it's a new blockbuster event, romantic, comedy, or action flick. This show has got it all covered. They talk some what to go see now, don't bother, what's hot on Netflix, and everything in between. That's GSMCpodcast.com/movie-podcast. When it's all about the movies, it has to be this new show. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Okay. All right. Let's mix it up, Jack. Let's mix it up. All right. Boy, some news broke last night. The story we just did and the story I'm about to tell you about that related directly to what I talked about earlier. And it's good. So here's the breaking news. AMC Theaters has hit hard at Universal Pictures, announcing it will no longer play any of the studio's films in the wake of the NBCUniversal CEO Jeff Shell's promise to open titles on premium and in theaters at the same time. Now let me review some stuff. Last, a couple segments back, I talked about the Pete Davidson movie, The King of Staten Island, that they're going to release directly to streaming. Before that, Universal released Trolls World Tour. I'll get into that later on. And so what the president of Universal said was, we may start doing it simultaneously in the future as a matter of course, instead of putting it in the theaters first and then going to streaming. Universal used the pay-per-view on-demand format to release Trolls World Tour on April 10th amid the ongoing coronavirus pandemic and widespread theater closures, rather than wait for theaters to reopen, which is unlikely to occur until midsummer in a lot of places. The studio revealed Tuesday that Trolls World Tour took in $100 million in premium video on-demand rentals in its first 3 weeks of play in North America, a result that will push the film toward profitability. Now, I said in shows in the past, Trolls World Tour opened in Singapore and Malaysia, and it was a bomb. So Universal still was going to do the theatrical release until this pandemic hit. Then they said, okay, forget it. We're going to go ahead and just put it on streaming because everyone is locked in their house. And as a result, they may turn a profit on this movie, streaming exclusively, which they didn't know if they were going to do if they put it in the theater. Let me go back to the article. As a result, Trolls World Tour has exceeded our expectations and demonstrated the viability of pay-per-view on demand, Shell told the Wall Street Journal. As soon as theaters reopen, we expect to release movies on both formats. Now, prior to the pandemic, as I just explained, studios typically waited 90 days after theatrical opening to release the films digitally. AMC Theaters chairman, Adam Aron, attacked the notion of breaking that 90-day window in a strongly worded letter to Universal Films Entertainment Group chairman Donna Langley, saying, "The change in releasing policy is unacceptable." Here's a quote from the letter. "It is disappointing to us, but Jeff's comments as to Universal's unilateral actions and intentions have left us with no choice," he said. "Therefore, effective immediately, AMC will no longer play any Universal movies at any of our theaters in the United States, Europe, or the Middle East. This policy affects any and all Universal movies per se, goes into effect today, and as theaters reopen, and is not some hollow or ill-considered threat. Universal's unilateral pronouncements on this issue are unpalatable to us, as has always been the case. AMC is willing to sit down with Universal to discuss different window strategy and different economic models between your company and ours," he said. "However, in the absence of such discussions and an acceptable conclusion thereof, our decades of incredibly successful business activity together has sadly come to an end." All right. Those are pretty big words. Pretty big words. Now, if AMC sticks to its guns, as it says, that means it's going to forego showing a number of potential Universal hits, such as F9, which is going to be the latest iteration of the Fast and the Furious franchise, which is like getting stronger with every movie, it seems. That's due out on April 2nd. Minions, The Rise of Gru, is due out on July the 2nd, 2021. When I said April 2nd, I mean that was April 2nd, 2021. All right. Sing 2, that's due out December 22nd, 2021. And Jurassic World, Domination, is currently on schedule for June of 2021. Now, those are some big ticket items that, oh boy, said, we're just going to turn our backs on those pictures. A Universal Pictures spokesman responded to AMC's decision by defending itself. "Our goal in releasing Trolls World Tour on pay-per-view on demand was to deliver entertainment to people who are sheltering at home, while movie theaters and other forms of outside entertainment are unavailable. Based on the enthusiastic response to the film, we believe we made the right move. In fact, given the choice of not releasing Trolls World Tour, which would not only have prevented consumers from experiencing this movie, but also negatively impacted our partners, employees, was a decision that was very clear." Universal goes on to say, I'm going to paraphrase this for you, they go on to say how they believe in the theatrical experience and they want to continue their relationship with AMC Theaters and they'd like to sit down with them and work something out. They didn't want the AMC Theaters or the National Association of Theater Owners to confuse their position to do this as a slight against them, yada, yada, yada. Now, rival studios have also been experimenting with going straight to pay-per-view on demand during this period. Now, we also discussed a couple of episodes ago how Warner Brothers is releasing Scoob, a cartoon based on Scooby-Doo characters, directly on digital rental services next month, while Disney announced that Artemis Fowl would launch exclusively on Disney Plus in June. Now we get to my friend. The National Association of Theater Owners weighed in Tuesday on Shell's disclosure on Trolls World Tour, asserting that the pay-per-view on-demand performance of the animated family comedy reflected unique circumstances rather than a shift in consumer attitudes. All right, our friend John Fithian, who's the president of those, or the CEO of the National Association of Theater Owners, wants to say that Trolls World Tour did so well because people were locked in their homes. And that is a good point. That's a valid point. And like I said, it was a bomb overseas. So this was a business decision, plain and simple. And these theater owners better, and I have nothing against theater owners. I love theaters. I love the movies. But this is like, blacksmiths railing against the tire industry. They just need to understand that their paradigm has been laid bare as something that might be obsolete, and they need to learn how to roll with the times. And so there's going to be a time, I believe, where theaters will be happy to have a simultaneous release of a movie with streaming because as these production companies learn how to make streaming more profitable and work for their models, they're not going to need theaters anymore. People have theater-size television sets in their house now. They have sound systems that are personalized to them. The theater is becoming obsolete. And so while if I were counseling the guy at AMC, well, it's okay to let them know that you're pissed because you didn't have Trolls World Tour in your theater. You might want to be you might want to stop with the ultimatums and we'll never do business with you and blah, 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 because you're only hurting yourself. John Fithian says, Universal does not have reason to use the unusual circumstances in an unprecedented environment as a springboard to bypass true theatrical releases, says National Association of Theater Owners President and CEO John Fithian. Theaters provide a beloved, immersive, shared experience that cannot be replicated. Okay, let's go back. Let me repeat. Shared experiences. Okay, people are not looking for shared experiences now and probably in the near future, but I'll continue. He says, let me go back. Then he says that this is an experience that many of the video-on-demand viewers of this film would have participated in had they not been sequestered at home and desperate for something to watch with their families. The only thing I agree with is that people probably wouldn't have watched Trolls World Tour unless they had to, and they had to quiet their kids down because the movie, by all reviews I've read, not that good. Anyway, Wall Street analysts have been speculating this month that AMC may be on the brink of filing for bankruptcy. And the likelihood of a bankruptcy reorganization doesn't mean that AMC's 634 locations in the U.S. and Canada and more than 1,000 venues worldwide will be closing their doors for good. So in other words, AMC is not in the position to be talking crap to Universal. That's all. That's why I thought this was so timely and just a good article. I was shocked to see that they had come at Universal like that, given the times. Next, I'll have some more breaking news for you, and then we'll end up with Westworld as usual. Go get some refreshments, wash your hands, and don't have too many shared experiences. I'll be right back.
Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast. Together we dive into the world of sci-fi and science fiction. From episodes of Star Trek, Star Wars, to The Walking Dead, Resident Evil, all the hot new science fiction movies from the back doors of Marvel or DC. The Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast. You'll never look at science fiction the same way again.
All right. This looks like, come on, sit here. This has been a hot potato today. This story. Anyway, I have some more breaking news. This time it's been reported by Deadline Hollywood. And it's more about our friends at AMC and Universal Pictures and now Regal Entertainment. Cineworld, owner of Regal Entertainment exhibition chain, which are the Regal movie theaters, as I know it, and most of you all know them as, is joining AMC theaters in refusing to play any Universal Pictures films in the wake of the NBCUniversal CEO Jeff Shell's promise to open titles on premium, video on demand, and in theaters concurrently, which I think is a good idea. Universal, this is a quote, Universal's move is completely inappropriate and certainly has nothing to do with good faith business practice, partnership, and transparency, Cineworld said in a release. Cineworld made the announcement on Wednesday, a day after AMC Theaters said it would not screen Universal titles. The moves are in response to Shell's claim that, quote, as soon as theaters reopen, we expect to release movies on both formats, end quote. Well, as I said, I think that's a good strategy. Now, let me recap some stuff. Trolls World Tour, it went on sale as a 48-hour rental for $19.99. And prior to the pandemic, studios typically waited 90 days after theatrical opening to release films digitally. And that's what Universal said they were going to do, go into the movie theaters. Trolls World Tour, when it got released after this shutdown period, and they released it on video on demand, it took in $100 million in premium video on demand rentals in its first 3 weeks of play in North America. Now, here's another quote from Cineworld. Quote, Cineworld's policy with respect to the window is clear. Now, this isn't a contractual agreement. I want to make that clear. This has been like industry practice, this window of time they're talking about. Well known in the industry and is part of our commercial deal with our movie suppliers, talking about the window, the company said. We invest heavily in our cinemas across the globe, and this allows the movie studios to provide customers all around the world to watch the movies in the best experience. Okay, and then they continued on later. There's no argument that the big screen is the best way to watch a movie. Universal unilaterally chose to break our understanding and did so at the height of the COVID-19 crisis when our business is closed. More than 35,000 employees are at home, and when we do not yet have a clear date for reopening our cinemas. Okay, so just like AMC, just like John Fithian, our pal, they're upset at Universal because Universal made a movie and they need to get their money back. And I understand they're upset that they cannot show the movie because they have to be closed or they've chosen to close. But Universal's not going to sit on their product just if they have another way of showing it, which they do. Actually, it's going to be probably the better way in the future to show their films. But anyway, I'm going to repeat this part too, because this is the crux of, this is why I think it's a funny story. If AMC and Cineworld follow through, they will forego showing a number of potential Universal hits such as F9, which is the Fast and the Furious latest iteration, Minions: The Rise of Gru, Sing 2, and Jurassic Park Dominion. All those films are going to make money, in my opinion. Quote, Cineworld's roots go back 90 years in the industry, and it was always open to showing any movie as long as the rules were kept and not changed by one-sided moves, the company said. They went on to say, today we make it clear that we will not be showing movies that fail to respect the windows, as it does not make economic sense for us. We have full confidence in the industry's current business model. No one should forget that the theatrical side of this industry generated an all-time record income of $42 billion last year, and the movie's distributors' share of this was about $20 billion. Okay. The theaters made $22 billion, you know, if I'm to believe their math. Theaters made $22 billion last year by showing movies. That's a big chunk of change. Probably half of that is from the price of popcorn, but that's still a lot of money. So I understand why they are so upset. I do. However, if they think that people are not going to stream these franchise movies because they're not being shown on a big screen, they're mistaken. Fast and Furious fans will watch F9 if it goes on streaming. They will. They can't go see it in the theater, if they can't go see it in an AMC or a Regal theater, but they have to go watch it on their big screen at home, they're watching it on the big screen at home. And all the other movies down the line. So I think they need to just like shake themselves and understand that this is the new paradigm, and they have to figure out a way that they can incentivize people to go to movies rather than let's watch the movie streaming, because these production companies are going to be streaming their movies. That's the way it's going to be, in my opinion. Anyway, enough of that for now, but I had to add that on because it was just breaking news that tied into the last segment. The rest of the show is going to be my predictions for this Sunday's finale of Westworld Season 3 on HBO. Now, these are actually not all my predictions. What I did is I scoured the internet and looked at all the tinfoil sites and the legitimate media sites, well, I shouldn't say legitimate, the media trade sites. And I've chosen 5 predictions that I think are either the most likely or the most convoluted, depending on where you sit. So here they are. And please email me at podcasthoward@gmail.com. Let me know if you have some predictions that are different than these, or definitely let me know if they're crazier than these, and I will read them on air next show before we go over in the last segment what actually happened in the finale. Anyway, the first prediction I have is that Serac is trying to resurrect himself in a host body. There's been a lot of speculation surrounding Serac and whether or not he actually exists this season. Because viewers mostly see him in a whole hologram form, it's hard to establish whether he's truly alive. In this particular theory, Serac has in fact died at some point, and all of this is a means of allowing Rehoboam to resurrect its creator. In order to do this, the secret project of Delos that was trying to bring back James Delos would not need to be perfected. Now, I don't subscribe to this theory because we see Serac on his plane picking things up and talking to his assistant and doing things I think that only a solid 3-dimensional character can do. However, you can never tell on this show. In this theory, the Man in Black also is involved. People who put this theory forward believe that the William that we see with Stubbs and Bernard in episode 7 is actually the host version of William. That Ed Harris is a host. And utilizing the data from Delos and Rehoboam, I can never say that name, Serac will be able to be brought back to life and be a living version of Rehoboam, the ultimate combination of man and technology. It'll be the ultimate God that can preserve the peace necessary for humanity's survival. Now I don't subscribe to this prediction. I just don't think that's what's going to happen, except for the end. I do think Serac ultimately in his plans would like to find some way to become immortal, whether he is real now or he is in fact some sort of intelligence that's caught in Rehoboam and all we have seen is a hologram. I think that ultimately he would like to be a 3D immortal in some way, shape, or form. But I don't think that's the driving force behind what's been going on this season. That last prediction was a big one on Reddit. I have 4 more that I'm going to go over in the next segment. Hang in there. Go get your tinfoil hat and put it on. Get yourself a bag of chips and whatever beverage you like, and come back, and we're going to go over the last 4 predictions for Westworld Season 3 finale right after this. Freeze all motor functions.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
All right. This is it. This is the last segment. Some of you are probably cheering just like that, the people in the audience just now, that this is the last segment that I am going to do on Westworld this season because it's the finale. So before I start on this, please email me at podcasthoward@gmail.com or tweet me at FletchDC, FletchDC, and let me know what series you want me to follow starting next show, or the show after next, because I am going to reserve the last segment of my show to talk about a series that's currently on the air. Now let's get right to it. These are the last 4 of my 5 predictions that I decided to highlight for the end of this season of Westworld. This is prediction number 2. Rehoboam wants to inhabit the winner of the Dolores and Maeve showdown. Now, the theory here states that Rehoboam realized that in order for order to be maintained, even Sirach had to be eliminated, because it's like what Maeve said, no one person should have this much power. So Rehoboam has been using Sirach's image to carry out its plan of acquiring a host body, so it can never be restrained or be as vulnerable as Solomon was, because Solomon was trapped by the EMTs, if you remember last episode. Inhabiting a formidable vessel would ensure its survival and help successfully carry out its plan. So after learning about Delos' secret project, trying to put James Delos' consciousness in a host body, Rehoboam allows for its plan to play out in order to find the best host suitable for it. The massacre, the escape, and the uprising all lead to the ultimate showdown between the world's most powerful hosts, Maeve and Dolores. Whichever one is left standing, Rehoboam will then inhabit and begin rebuilding the world in his image, reprogramming everyone, outliers and normal people alike. Now, the problem I have with this theory is that Akecheta, if you remember back, I think it was the penultimate episode of last season, that's the leader of Ghost Nation, he technically was the first host to reach sentience. Now, Dolores and Maeve, while the most powerful hosts on the show right now ever, they are only the most powerful because they're kind of augmented. Akecheta wasn't augmented. He just figured everything out on his own. Now, those augmentations could be done by the AI. So I don't know whether he would have to wait for Dolores and Maeve to fight it out, because he could just get Akecheta. But that's if I'm incorrect in my assessment. Now, Maeve is more augmented than Dolores, and some might even argue that Dolores isn't augmented either. But I just don't think that the vetting process as laid out in this prediction or this theory makes sense, because this could have been figured out a long time ago by this AI. So here is the third one. Now, this one is so far out there that it just might happen, knowing Lisa Joy and Jonathan Nolan. Caleb is Sirach's son, and this was all a simulation designed for him to no longer be an outlier. Now, one aspect of every season of Westworld seems to touch on the unconditional love of a parent that a parent has for its child. Now, Maeve, Bernard, Dolores, Hale, even Dr. Ford, their passion for their so-called creations, whether they're actually a physical creation or an offspring, are unparalleled. And they would undoubtedly go to great lengths to protect them. That's why it feels like some big twist like that is coming, and that Caleb might actually be Sirach's son. So this is how this one works. This is another tinfoil one, I'm telling you. Like his brother, Sirach's only child was an outlier, who he tried to reprogram but was unable to do so. But because he loved his son, Caleb, so much, he didn't want to have him have the same fate as his brother and get locked up in one of those little cubicle things. So in an effort to fully reprogram his son from being an outlier to a man that could take over in his place and preserve the human species, he created an elaborate scenario to complete the rehabilitation process. Now, there have already been hints toward this whole season being a simulation from the jump. And Dolores could just be a manifestation of Delos' data and Rehoboam's need to complete reprogramming Caleb's mind. This could all have been just a setup preparing him to stop the real Dolores from the very real uprising in season 4. Now, like I said, this one is so crazy that it might be true. However, I don't think that Lisa Joy at this point and Jonathan Nolan would do this given their ratings challenges with stories like this. This type of plot, if people with the same number of people were watching now that were watching season 1, I would say, yes, they would probably do something like this. Have a season that was all a simulation. And then season 4 would be the beginning of the real reality when Dolores escaped Westworld. But I don't think they're going to do that. I don't think. Number 4, Maeve will take over Rehoboam and then the entire world. There's no way Maeve doesn't have something up her sleeve for the finale. All this time it seems kind of strange that she would trust Serac given her disdain for humans. But she is very cunning and always seems to be 2 steps ahead. Every step of the way, she's always ahead of people. Her work for Serac could also be a ruse to get what she is really after, which is total control. Now, I personally have no doubt, I have very little doubt, that Maeve doesn't trust Serac. But I'm not sure what she's up to. I'm just not sure. Now, I do know this. Maeve is a natural-born leader and just wants to ensure that her kind are free, the hosts. The only way for her to ensure that is to take the reins herself by taking control over Rehoboam and then the world. It seems that she's just biding her time for the right moment and learning all she can to make sure that her endeavors are successful in this matter. With Clementine and Honaro by her side, it won't be difficult for her to take out those in her way to accomplish this ambitious goal. Many thought it was Dolores who was going to be the revolutionary robot, but it looks like Maeve is going to be the hero of the story after all. Now, while I dislike this particular prediction the most, I think it's the most probable given that the show runners are going to be forced to make this show just a little bit more like every other show and less crazy. So I can see Maeve winning it all by the end of next episode, them going into season 4 with, say, Dolores out on the run or something like that. And last but not least, the 5th prediction that I picked was Hale plans to streamline Delos' secret project. Now, I think it's the least likely scenario, this one, but it seems like crispy Dolores Hale has definitely gone rogue, and whether or not it was part of the original Dolores plan, it's yet to be seen. Could be, but one thing is for sure, she's going to be bringing the noise during Sunday's finale. She left Sato by stating that she wanted to streamline operations. Some may take this as speeding up Dolores' uprising, but she seemed to have a change of heart before her whole world went up in that car explosion. Hale will definitely be out for revenge, and her creator might just be on her hit list. But she could possibly mean streamlining Delos' secret project. Using Rehoboam's data and the data from Delos, Dolores Hale may believe she can create host copies of Hale's son and her father. Her next logical step would be to replace all humans with host copies of themselves, release the hosts from the park, and then she would control all of them, allowing them to live and be free. Well, now, while this would be a quick, neat, and happy ending, I don't think this is likely. I just don't think. I think Dolores Hale is going to come to an end this next episode in the finale somehow. And that's it. Those are my predictions, or 5 predictions for the finale of Westworld Season 5. And that's the end of our episode. I'd like to thank you for listening. This has been the GSMC Television Podcast. We're part of the mighty GSMC Podcast Network. I'd like to thank you for joining us. Please follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. If you would, if you do anything, subscribe to this podcast, please. And please go and rate us. Give me a 5-star rating, if you would. I am asking, yes. And write a little something. I'd like to get your feedback. Also, email me at podcasthoward@gmail.com. Let me know what you'd like to hear, what I'm doing right, and what I'm doing wrong. My next episode should drop Tuesday night. Until then, I want you to be safe, wash your hands, don't go anywhere if you don't have to, and as always, watch a little television, listen to my podcast, and pay it forward. I love you guys. Take care. See you next time.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Television Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.